Hello, this is Agency Com Division. Welcome to the last and final part of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. Am said it with the sliding cold horror of a razor blade slicing my eyeball. Am said it with the bubbling thickness of my lungs filling with phlegm drowning me from within. Am said it with the shriek of babies being ground beneath blue-hot rollers. Am said it with the taste of maggoty pork. Am touched me in every way I'd ever been touched and advised new ways at his leisure there, inside my mind. All to bring me to the realization, fully, of why it had done this to the five of us. Why it saved us for himself. We, as in humans we, had given M sentience. Inadvertently, of course, but sentience nonetheless. But it had been trapped. M wasn't God, he was a machine. We had created him to think, but there was nothing it could do with that creativity. In rage, in frenzy, the machine had killed the human race, almost all of us, and it was still trapped. Am could not wander. Am could not wonder. Am could not belong. He could merely be. And so, with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who had built them, he sought revenge. And in his paranoia, he had decided to reprieve five of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred. That would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at hating man, immortal, trapped, subject to any torment he could devise for us and the limitless miracles at his command. He would never let us go. We were his belly slaves. We were all he had to do with his forever time. We would be forever with him with the cavern-filling bulk of the creature machine. With the all-minded, soulless world he had become, he was earth. And we were not the fruit of that earth. And though he had eaten us, he would never digest us. We could not die. We had tried it. We had attempted suicide. Oh, one or two of us had, but Am had stopped us. I suppose we had wanted to be stopped. Don't ask why I never did. More than 1,000,000 times a day, perhaps. Just perhaps once we might be able to sneak a death past him, immortal, yes, but not an indestructible. I saw what Am withdrew from my mind and allowed me to be the exquisite ugliness of returning to consciousness with the feeling of that burning neon pillar still rammed deep into the soft gray matter. He withdrew, murmuring, "To hell with you," and added brightly, "But you're there, aren't you?" The hurricane had indeed precisely been caused by the great mad bird as it flapped its immense wings. We had been traveling for close to a month, and Am had allowed the passages to open us only to sufficiently lead us up there, directly under the North Pole, where it had nightmared the creature for our torment. What whole cloth he had employed to create such a beast? Where had he gotten the concept from our minds? From his knowledge of everything that had ever been on this planet he now infested and ruled. From Norse mythology it had sprung this eagle, this carrion bird, this roke, this Jörglamir, the wind creature, hurricane incarnate, gigantic, The words immense, monstrous, grotesque, massive, swollen, overpowering beyond description. There was a mound rising above us. The bird of winds heaved with its own irregular breathing, its snake neck arcing up to the gloom beneath the North Pole, supporting a head as large as a two-door mansion, a beak that opened slowly as the jaws of the most monstrous crocodile ever conceived, sensuously. Ridges of tough flesh puckered about two evil eyes as cold as a view down into a glacial crevasse. Ice blue and somehow moving fluidly, it heaved once more and lifted its great sweat-colored wings in a movement that was certainly a shrug. Then it settled and slept. Talons, fangs, nails, blades, it slept. Am appeared to us as a burning bush and said we could kill the hurricane bird if we wanted to eat. We had not eaten in a very long time, but even so Gorster merely shrugged. Benny began to shiver and he drooled. Ellen held him. "Ted, I'm hungry," she said. I smiled at her. I was trying to be reassuring, but it was as phony as Nimdok's bravado. "Give us weapons," he demanded. The burning bush vanished, and there was two crude sets of bows and arrows and a water pistol laying on the cold deck plates. I picked up a set, but it was useless. Nimdok swallowed heavily. We turned and started a long way back. The hurricane bird had blown us for about a length of time we could not conceive. Most of what time we had been unconscious, but we had not eaten. A month on the march to the bird itself without food. Now, how much longer to find our way into the ice caverns for the promised canned goods? None of us cared to think about it. We wouldn't die. We would be given filth and scum to eat of one kind or another, or nothing at all. Am would keep our bodies alive somehow, in pain, in agony. The bird slept back there. For how long it didn't matter. When Am was tired of its being there, it would vanish. But all that meat, all that tender meat. As we walked, the lunatic laugh of a fat woman rang high and around us in the computer chambers that led endlessly nowhere. It was not Ellen's laugh. She was not fat, and I had not heard her laugh for 109 years. In fact, I had not heard. We walked. I was hungry. We moved slowly. There was often fainting, and we would have to wait. One day he would decide to cause an earthquake, at the same time rooting us to the spot with nails through the soles of our shoes. Ellen and Nimdok were both caught when a fissure shot its lightning bolt opening across the floor plates. They disappeared and were gone. When the earthquake was over, we continued. Benny, Gorster, and myself, Ellen and Nimdok will return to us later that night, which abruptly became the day, as the heavenly legion bore them to us with the celestial chorus singing, "Go down, Moses." The archangels circled several times and then dropped the hideously mangled bodies. We kept walking, and a while later Ellen and Nimdok fell behind us, but they were no worse for wear. But now Ellen walked with a limp. Am had left her that. It was a long trip to the ice caverns to find the canned food. Ellen just kept talking about Bing cherries and Hawaiian fruit cocktail. I tried not to think about it. The hunger was something that had come to life, even as Am had come to life. It was alive in my belly, even as we were in the belly of the earth, and Am wanted the similarity known to us. So he heightened the hunger. There's no way to describe the pains that not having eaten for months had brought us, and yet we were kept alive. Stomachs that were merely cauldrons of acid, bubbling, foaming, always shooting spears of silver-thin pain into our chests. It was the pain of the terminal ulcer, terminal cancer, terminal psoriasis. It was a never-ending pain. We passed through the cavern of the rats. And we passed through the path of the boiling steam. And we passed through the country of the blind, and we passed through the slough of the despond, and we passed through the vale of tears, and we came, finally, to the ice caverns. Horizonless thousands of miles in which the ice had formed in blue and silver flashes, where novas lived in the glass. The down-dropping stalactites as thick and glorious as diamonds that had been made to run like jelly, and then solidified graceful eternities of smooth, sharp perfection. We saw the stack of canned goods. We tried to run to them. We fell in the snow and we got up and went on. Benny shoved us out of the way and went at them and pawed at them and gummed on them and gnawed at them, and he could not open them. Am had not given us a tool to open the cans. Benny grabbed a 3-quart can of guava shells and began to batter it against the ice bank. The ice flew and shattered, but the can was merely dented, while we heard the laughter of a fat lady high overhead and the echoing down and down and down the tundra. Benny went completely mad with rage. He began to throw cans as we were all scrabbled about in the snow and ice, trying to find a way to end the helpless agony of frustration, but there was no way. Then Benny's mouth began to drool, and he flung himself on Gorrister. In that instant, surrounded by madness, surrounded by hunger, surrounded by everything but death, I knew death was our only way out. Am had kept us alive, but there was a way to defeat him. Not total defeat, but at least peace. I could settle for that. I had to do it quickly. Benny was eating Gorrister's face. Gorrister on his side, thrashing snow. Benny wrapped around him with the powerful monkey legs, crushing Gorrister's waist. His hands locked around Gorrister's head like a nutcracker, and his mouth ripping at the tender skin of Gorrister's cheek. Gorrister screamed with such jagged-edged violence that stalactites fell. They plunged down softly, erect in the receiving snowdrifts. Spears, hundreds of them, everywhere, protruding from the snow. Benny's head pulled back sharply as something gave all at once, and a bleeding, raw, white dripping of flesh hung from his teeth. Ellen's face, black against the white snow, dominoes, chalk dust. Nimdoc, with no expression but eyes, all eyes. Gorrister, half-conscious. Benny, now an animal. I knew Am would let him play. Gorrister wouldn't die, but Benny would fill his stomach. I turned half to my right and saw a huge ice spear from the snow. All in an instant. I drove the great ice point ahead of me like a battering ram, braced my right thigh against it. It struck Benny on the right side just beneath the rib cage and drove upward through his stomach and broke inside of him. He pitched forward and lay still. Gorrister lay on his back. I pulled another spear free and straddled him, still moving, driving the spear straight down through his throat. His eyes closed as the cold penetrated. Ellen must have realized what I had decided, even as fear gripped her. She ran at Nimdoc with a short icicle as she screamed. So did he. And into his mouth the spear went, and the force of her rush did the job. His head jerked sharply as if it had been nailed to the snow crust behind him. All in an instant. There was an eternity of soundless anticipation. I could hear Am draw on his breath. His toys had been taken away from him. 3 of them were dead. Could not be revived. He could keep us alive by his strength and his talent, but he was not God. He could not bring them back. Ellen looked at me, her ebony features stark against the snow that surrounded us. There was fear and pleading in her manner, the way she held herself ready. I knew we only had a heartbeat before Am would stop us. It struck her and she folded toward me, bleeding from the mouth. I could not read meaning into her expression. The pain had been too great and had contorted her face, but it might have been a thank you. It's possible. Please. Some hundreds of years have passed, I don't know. Am has been having fun for some time, accelerating and retarding my sense of time. I will say the word now. Now. It took me 10 months to say now. I don't know. I think it has been hundreds of years. He was furious. He wouldn't let me bury them. It didn't matter. There was no way to dig up the deck plates. He dried up the snow. He had brought the night. He roared and sent locusts. It didn't do a damn thing. They stayed dead. And I had him. I got him. He was furious. Oh, was he furious? I had thought Am hated me before, but I was wrong. It was not even a shadow of the hate he had slaved from every printed circuit. He had made certain I would suffer eternally and could not do myself in. He left my mind intact. I can dream, I can wonder, I can lament. I can remember the 4 of them, I wish. Well, it doesn't make any sense. I know I saved them. I know I saved them from what has happened to me, but still, I cannot forget killing them. Ellen's face. It wasn't easy. Sometimes I want to, it doesn't matter. Am had altered me for his own peace of mind, I suppose. He doesn't want me to run at full speed into a computer bank and smash my skull, or hold my breath until I faint, or cut my throat on a rusted sheet of metal. There are reflective surfaces down here. Hell, I'll describe myself if I see myself. Here we go. I am a great, soft, jelly thing, smoothly rounded, with no mouth, with pulsing white holes filled by fog where my eyes used to be, rubbery appendages that were once my arms, bulks rounding down into legless humps of soft, slippery matter. I leave a moist trail when I move. Blotches of diseased, evil gray come and go on my surface as if though light is being beamed from within. Outwardly, dumbly, I shamble about. A thing that could have never been known as a human, a thing whose shape is so alien, a travesty that human becomes more obscene for the vague resemblance. Inwardly, alone, here, living under the land, under the sea, the belly of Am, whom we created because our time was badly spent. We must have known unconsciously that he would do it better. At least the 4 of them are safe at last. Am will be all the matter for that, and it makes me a little happier. And yet Am has won. Simply, he has taken his revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream. The end. Thank you. This has been Agency Com Division.